Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today, I'm super excited because I have another fantastic guest for you. So, my guest today is a clinical psychologist in neuropsychology on a mission to rewrite some of the old medical narratives to instead prioritise holistic health and well-being. She is a practising clinician specialising in holistic health, pain management, and neuropsychology, combining her knowledge of the brain and psychology principles to offer individual treatment plans. She works with those suffering from a wide range of challenges, including mild stress, to those with a more significant diagnosis. So a very, very, very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Dr. Amber Johnston. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me today. This is exciting.
I'm super excited because that you're on the podcast and the subject that we're going to cover today. We've had actually a couple of great conversations where I've learned loads and loads and loads, but equally, I've been equally intrigued by a lot of the insights that you shared with me and the work that you're doing with your practice, your colleagues, helping people achieve a better life opportunities by a combination of different things. So I guess where I was keen to start is at the beginning. So I know this, you're from the US, based in the UK now. I don't think that even that far from me. So you've got an interesting blend. So you're a neuropsychologist, psychologist, but you're also an entrepreneur. So could you give us maybe a snapshot of your journey?
Sure. I mean, I think the most important piece of that is that it's definitely a journey. And I really am excited about the fact that I still have, 20, 30 years of work where I don't know where my journey is going to go.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool. I mean, I started off, of course, in, higher education, studying forever. It felt like it was forever, going through everything that I needed to go through to be a qualified clinical psychologist. And within clinical psychology, you then have different specialties. So within that, I started out actually in the prison system. That was my interest. And from there, there's a lot of neurological injury with people who go on to commit crimes. And so I ended up taking more interest in the neuro side of things, which of course meant additional training and getting into really that population. And there's so much to learn about the brain and to think of what the brain is doing in terms of our emotion states and our behavior. And within my work in hospitals, particularly for those after brain injury, it also gave me a lot of exposure to people who had physical health conditions, either before injury or later developing or alongside, and to start to see how the health condition was so closely linked with brain activity as well, became a real interest and a real passion of mine. The story kind of went from different hospital settings, kind of working my way up, getting into management in some of those hospitals. And I had an opportunity to get into private practice. So I started that. And then as the referrals started coming in and I was running out of space, I was like, how do I meet the need? And I pulled in some of my colleagues and my good friends to come be associates. And from there, it just ended up accidentally growing into to a practice. But that became the entrepreneurial side of suddenly learning and having to learn how to have a business, not just a psychology practice, like a one-man show, as I had been doing for such a long time. So there is definitely a lot of learning along the way just to grab the opportunities that were kind of there in front of me.
Yeah. And so psychology, what appealed to you about psychology? Was it a love at first sight kind of career choice for you?
It was when I was about 12, I started writing an Ask Amber column for my middle
Oh,
school
really?
paper. Yeah. So just my little 12-year-old friends would write, their woes on a piece of paper and put it in a box, and I would pick it out and give them all kinds of sage advice of how they should handle it. So I think from a really young age, I mean, that's kind of the fun story. I think from in later life and reflection, the more personal story was that I struggled with I experienced a number of people around me pass away in all kinds of different situations, but they were always somebody who had a relationship that was more meaningful with somebody else. I felt more of a bystander, and somehow along that way, I felt like my role became a supportive, character to those around me who were struggling. Even, I might have been struggling too, but that was almost how I felt I would cope with it. So I think really early on and through my development, I took on this role that became personally meaningful. And then I guess also I was kind of nosy, and I like to hear people's problems.
Aren't we all? Um, so I said a word in your bio, which I'm keen to maybe expand on. I'm sure people listening, watching might be curious about exactly what it means. So neuropsychology, what does neuropsychology mean?
It's technically its own field. And the idea with clinical psychology is, there's a whole history of how that developed, but it's very much looking at the concept of mental illness. And originally, clinical psychology was developed to support psychiatrists. So really looking at those with medical diagnosis of the mind, and helping psychiatrists with the diagnosis and the talk therapy and treatment. And even now, you'll still see a bit of a divide. This is not, across the board. There's many psychiatrists who will do talk therapy, but a lot of times they are there for diagnosis and to review medication options. And the psychologists can often work very closely to do the talk therapy treatment alongside. Now, again, that's just that all kinds of people have, different caveats to their practice. But neuropsychology was much more about understanding the behavior. Is really the external behavior that you would see after a neurological injury. So again, one of the things I would do is I would look at a patient who had either a traumatic brain injury or a stroke or some kind of neurological disease process, be able to read where in the brain there's been damage and almost make a prediction before even walking into the room of what I might expect, what they would be like, what this damage might do to the person. And then we go in and do much more testing. There's a whole load of neuropsychological assessment that we can do that gives us ideas about what parts of the brain after injury are still working really well. It could be compensatory, and where there might be weaknesses that we know we need to direct our rehabilitation. And that can be everything from memory impairment to high level thinking to the behavior and the way that they can control behavior to movement. And there's lots of different pieces there. So that's what a neuropsychologist tends to do. In theory, neuropsychology tends to be involved after something's gone wrong with the brain. But I guess what I'm interested in is almost trying to put forward more neuropsychology to get to the public awareness of the healthy brain, how the healthy brain is working. But and then that means really combining the actual brain structure and how the brain, processes things and what chemicals are involved in our behavior and our presentation with our mindset as well. So almost combining the clinical of the mind with the neuro of the physicality of the brain.
Yeah, fascinating. So in relation to the brain, on an average, difficult to answer this, so this is a bit of a random question, but percentage-wise, on average, how much of our brain does the average person use or know how to use? If you can answer that.
You know what? I think I don't know what the statistic would be, but I do think that there's some pretty big myths there. You
Okay.
know, you'll hear the myths that say we're only actually using 10% of our brain or what our brain capacity,
Mm.
and that's not true. We're
Okay.
using all of our brain all of the time, including what we call the default mode, which is when we're doing nothing, the whole brain is lit up. There's a whole network that you can see all lit up that's in this kind of default phase of us just being, not necessarily doing anything in particular. Now, there's all kinds of different areas that have been identified as involved with specific types of processes, but that's really simplistic. The idea is that the networks that are wrapped within us are on fire all the time, and they're always ready to be activated. We call it action potential. You'll always have, the brain and different parts of it ready for action at any point. So it's kind of not
Okay.
what you might be asking, which is again a bit of a different topic, is how much of our brain is conscious versus unconscious processing.
Okay. I'll take that as a question, definitely.
And I think that again is a really important concept. There's the majority of our brain is functioning outside of our awareness. I just read a statistic of something like 95% of our brain is prepared of it's ready for things that it's learned previously. This is not stuff that we're consciously making happening. Our brain's learned. Our brain's been learning our entire life.
Yeah.
So it's always getting prepared and preparing us for what it is predicting will happen next as we move through our environment.
Okay. That sounds really interesting. So everybody that listens to this, watches this, or the majority, I would say, is quite aspirational and is looking to achieve wonderful things. And are there techniques that we can develop or focus on in relation to the brain, conscious versus maybe non-conscious, to maybe be more intentional? So some of that stuff that is maybe sits in the non-conscious can come into the conscious. So I'm not sure if I've explained that very well, but hopefully you'll be able to take something from what I'm attempting to say.
That's a big question. There, we could go down many different paths on this, to think about our higher level thinking. So when we're talking about people who are, really going for it and really trying to break the mold and work hard, we're talking about an area of the brain. The prefrontal cortex is very important for our kind of, abstract thinking and reasoning and planning. It's actually it's not that big of what our brain is there for, actually, but that's a really important part of what makes us human, this prefrontal cortex. But there's all kinds of mechanisms that's going to be supporting that or hindering it as well. So, for instance, we have reward pathways within the brain, and that's going from limbic system into some of the frontal cortex. And dopamine is the chemical involved with reward seeking. And that's not just waiting to get something that's obvious like food or sex or something that drives us. An Amazon package, that too is a big dopamine hit, but it's also dopamine is used when we are taking steps to achieving a goal and getting that feeling of like, okay, I'm on to the next thing. I'm moving forward. We're using our dopamine stores, and that's a very powerful molecule. We know how powerful dopamine can be because dopamine is what drives us to pick up our phones every 2 minutes to check them.
Yeah, that's interesting. So along that point, so if we're looking to achieve something or do something, are rewards a useful tool to use? So if I'm looking to, maybe as an example, that if not a very good example, but I can't think of one better. But say if I don't know, I want to, maybe I'll put a ban on myself texting people until I completed a number of tasks in the morning. So say I can't, when I get up, don't look at my phone initially, but then I've got a curfew until I've done these I'll say mundane tasks that have to be done in order for me to achieve my objectives. Can we put in systems like that
Absolutely. So if we think about the brain in that predictive fashion, you are going to be primed to pick up that phone. One, the dopamine surge is there already. Two, you're going to have associations with, your phone being by your bed, or your phone being, next to your computer, or what, you will naturally have things set up that's going to make you want to move in that direction that you've moved previously many times in the past. So that's going to be, you'll see the areas of the brain lit up, ready, that if you see your phone, your arm is going to be primed, ready to reach for it. But the idea of making any kind of behavior change is one, bringing it into awareness, being really aware of the habits that you have, these habits. And like you say, putting in those rewards are incredibly important. When people are trying to make much bigger changes, let's say like start an exercise program or something that they're not really wanting to do, but know they should, or know there'll be rewards down the line, but that's delayed gratification. That's harder to access. We need rewards that happen quicker. And one of the biggest, we're kind of going off topic, but one of the biggest problems that I see with people making goals, for instance, to start an exercise program, is that they aim to begin as they expect to end. So they decide that they're going to do all these things. They're going to be on the treadmill 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week, as opposed to making much, 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 much smaller, more achievable goals that they set, that they get a reward for achieving, while they start to create new habits. And as the new habit starts to form and the brain's ready to do that new thing as the new predictive next step, then they can be adding and increasing, getting the reward, whatever that reward can be. But and that's how you can start to make change. Instead of going from 0 to 100, we need to go from 0 to 2 and get really successful at 2 before we then go to 4. And putting in reward systems in those little moments, little mini rewards, can be really helpful.
Yeah. I heard something the other day. I think I can't remember verbatim, but it was something, it relates to James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And he was, to your point, he was talking about taking tiny steps. So if we make 1% progression every day, that will compound. And over the year, he calculated it to be a 37% compound increase in whatever habit we're looking to achieve. And to your point, I think, I'm definitely a victim of that, where you have an idea about I want to achieve something or do something, but when I think about that, I'm thinking about the end results, and then I'm not thinking about I've got to work this, but there's obviously work that has to be done, and sometimes that can stop me in my tracks because you want that immediate gratification, which is totally unrealistic. So it's a case of just having that more of a realistic mindset.
Yeah. And, in his book, that he has an analogy that I just think is really, really a special one, where he talks about, when we're talking about this kind of, we want to see that end result and have the reward of what we're aiming to achieve. And this is why it's so important to put in just little mini rewards that maybe are not that full, maybe completely unrelated. But he talks about the idea of ice melting. And if you have something that is, some water that's negative 10 degrees Celsius, you are going to put some heat and put some heat and put some heat, but there will not be any change, even though it's going from 10 to 9 to 8 and 7, until you hit this magical moment. And then suddenly you go from ice to water. So all of that effort and that heat going in is making impact. You just can't see it. And therefore it can get really disheartening unless you have done something more consciously to keep your motivation going and keeping you have that persistence that's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All these different techniques, it almost feels to me as though it's becoming harder now. I'm going to ask you questions about the brain and stuff in a second, but it almost feels to me that just because of technology, phones, microwaves, Everything's instant, 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 instant.
Yeah.
And the technique that we need to develop to be be not just be prepared for the journey, but actually try and enjoy it. It almost feels that it's we're moving away from that a little bit, and that's why the work that you do is so important, because it's given us tools and thought patterns and awareness, understanding that actually we can do a lot of these things with a lot more awareness and enjoyment and I guess more satisfaction.
Yeah, I think, if we think about what's happened evolutionarily, we've had so many thousands and thousands of years that our body has been keeping up with what we've needed, mainly to run around in the plains and to hunt deer and gather berries. And we were made for that. And part of that is that you have to do all this physical exercise to be able to eat, and then you have to have rest. And
Yeah.
so rest also became, a really enjoyable activity, that with the way that our bodies and our brains have been structured to enjoy rest also. And we need sleep. We know we need sleep. There's all kinds of stuff about sleep there. But what we've done over, our advanced society is we've created so many new ways to have luxury and rest. And actually, evolution hasn't caught up with it. We still need to be using our bodies the way that we used to. We just don't have to in society. And that's become part of where we end up with a lot of difficulties of both physical health condition and mental health. We all know that inactivity and isolation is really bad for our emotional state and our stress levels.
Okay. So lots of really interesting stuff there. And in relation to the brain and body having that alignment that we need, how important is that?
There's been a movement around this for 150 years ago, we were more in tune with thinking of our brain and body as one. But over, especially in the past 100 years, especially with germ theory and, invention of penicillin and a real focus on how, just the microorganism world with which we have here, there's become this real specialty focus on things. So even when we think of the medical system, we go to a GP who will very quickly put us on a path towards some kind of specialist who will focus on a very, very small aspect of our body. So we've really moved away, and there's a big movement now moving back to more of a holistic organism. So even that concept of mind body, that was coming back to say we can't separate these things. We are still even separating it by a hyphen, mind hyphen body, as opposed to what some people in the literature are saying, no, it is one. It is one thing. And mind body as a word, no hyphen, is what's happening. And that's not the way that our healthcare system functions.
So there's a big gap that needs to be bridged in order to get things in sync.
There's a lot of people who are pushing for this and trying to show a huge amount of literature that is suggesting to what extent the way we think, the way we feel things, how all of that is impacting, even on a cellular level, even on a DNA level, what is going on within our bodies. Yet at the same time, that's not necessarily the treatment path. And you also see a lot of resistance to it too. And I think that's why we put in the title, The Fear of This, because there is a lot of negativity or resistance or fear that people feel to think that their emotion state might have some impact on what's going on with their medical diagnosis, or even the fact that they potentially could develop medical diagnoses based off of how much they're putting themselves under in terms of the stress of a job they have to have, or, taking care of responsibilities, or even in a society that we live in, which is incredibly stressful.
So just for everybody listening, you will probably have seen this as you tuned in, but the title of this episode is Brain Body Connection, the Fear and the future. And so just in relation to our, I guess maybe thinking more laterally and having a better understanding of our brain. So I'm a layperson, so I don't have your education, training, and so forth. So for people that are listening to this and watching this, that definitely feel that like, yeah, I definitely want to be more engaged, more aligned, and be able to have a better understanding how I can control my thoughts and my emotions. How do they start? Where's a good place to begin and have a better awareness and control?
Oh, again, you give me these massive questions.
Exam questions.
I mean, they're great questions because this is what, people want to know. And I guess, the point is first just raising awareness that this system is one, it's not two, it's one. And that means, the question is, are you taking care of your whole system? Or is it that actually, you are still separating these ideas and just thinking that lifestyle is what it is, or that the way that you think, what I hear a lot of people say is, oh well, I've always been like this, so there's no point changing me now. We have neuroplasticity. Plastic change. It means that when I just saw a 90-year-old lady who came to me because she wanted to get on top of some of her anxiety, and
amazing.
That's exactly what we need, is people who are always able to say, I think this is something that maybe I could work on. Maybe there's a way that I can move something forward here. And that means so much of it is trying to identify and becoming more aware of our patterns of behavior, our patterns of thinking, and where those hiccups are, where are the hurdles. And again, it might be that one person might have a big hurdle where they think that their diet is really off. Somebody else might say that their sleep is, a real problem for them. Others will say, they just can't control ruminative thinking. Everybody will have a different place where they might want to begin thinking about what ideally they would like their life to look like. And because every one of these things are all going to be interconnected in the system, each one has the potential to create change within the longevity or the well-being of both their mind and their body. By doing any of those things could have impact across all the others. That's the key.
Yeah. I was just thinking around. I've got two thoughts in my head. I'm just wondering which one to go with in terms of my question. So I'll go with.
You can give me both. I'll choose.
See if I can remember them. So I'll go with the first one actually, because I've written down one. So I was thinking around me, people listening, watching, that maybe we're at work and we have, whenever we're in a certain meeting, or if we're with a certain individual, we get a little bit anxious because of something that's happened. Is there a way that we can document that? So maybe after the meeting or when we get home, we have a review of the day. There might be tick, 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 everything was good, but there might be little moments actually where I felt a little bit anxious there. So ultimately, we're getting a pattern of when we feel anxious or when we feel embarrassed. And then if we find a pattern, then I imagine it's probably easier for someone like you to support somebody like me that says, yeah, this is what I've documented. I get embarrassed in these moments, or I feel anxious in these moments. What's going on? Do you have any thoughts around that?
I can kind of talk you through what I would be doing with somebody, how I would be supporting them. Again, I'm not doing the work. I am nothing more than asking a lot of questions or giving some tools or tips or a guide. But, it's the client, it's the person who's the one who's going to be doing the work.
Yeah.
And I guess what, the first thing that you said there, what my first thought is that though it's very important to record these because you're looking for an understanding of patterns and what's happening, I also think it's really important to not just capture the negatives. We also
Okay.
want to capture what we're doing right as well.
Okay.
And we so quickly do that. Our brain is focused on threat. And if we have a moment where we're feeling anxious or we're feeling under threat, our brain's going to log that. It's better for us to consciously be aware of it too, but it doesn't log all the things that we're doing well. That's not where it's spending its energy.
Okay.
So we need to put a bit more conscious energy too of being able to say, I was in a board meeting, I did have this moment or I was feeling like something wasn't right. If I spend a moment to reflect on it, I think it might have been the way that they suggested something to me, which to me felt like they were blaming me for something. Okay, so we start to have a clue. But I also went to 3 other meetings that day and everything was cool. So, actually, I'm able to do this. I'm capable. I feel really good about this. However, there's a trigger, and I can spend a moment to reflect on that. Do you see what I'm saying with that?
Yeah.
We can get so easily caught in just, a self-blame and shame cycle. And that's not what we want to do. We want to catch us doing good too. But if we do capture some of the negative and can start to see what was the trigger, a lot of times these triggers are not about what happens in the moment. They are about something that's been triggered from our past experiences that our brain goes, that sounds familiar. That was a problem. Therefore, let's raise an alarm. And so we have an anxiety response as an alarm, or are we in a dangerous situation? And danger in this environment is social, social dangers. So, or integrity, our ego danger, the danger to us being part of the tribe and being a valued member. And that's what could be happening in that boardroom. But again, if we spend a bit of what I would be working with a client on is trying to notice the trigger, notice if it's raising something from a previous point in time, and just having a moment to really reflect. Is that the true situation now? Is that the true danger of now? Sometimes it is, but sometimes that's going to be then how we just manage the fact that we have an evil boss, or we have somebody who's demanding too much, or that we are up against it in a stressful environment because of, a real situation. So do we want to stay in that situation? Do we just need to develop resilience to it? Do we need to come away from self-blame and shame, have a bit more understanding of an external, factor that's involved? There's lots of different techniques about what we can do once we start to recognize our patterns and our triggers.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you said. Well, everything's interesting, but it's very interesting around that narrative where we spend huge amounts of time focusing on a negative experience, and that might occupy 5% of a day.
Absolutely.
95% would have, potentially has been good. You've had good interactions, you've had a good conversation with a client, you got to work on time, and there was all this consistent good stuff that happens. But the 5-minute conversation, or even maybe a facial gesture from somebody, totally destroys the day, and that's what we take home with us.
That's right. And again, having some awareness of that goes a far way. And then you bring me on to the wonderful topic of mindfulness.
Yes.
Everybody knows that they're supposed to be mindful, but nobody knows what that means. And everybody hates it a little bit until they kind of really get it. And I think that the problem with that is that people haven't really been told or taught to understand what the point of mindfulness is. The point of mindfulness is being in the present. That means putting your attention in the present. So right now I could be thinking about that, awful look that I got in that, 5 seconds of my day 6 hours ago. And that could be ruminating and cycling and creating a huge load on my body as the stress response is just cycling through. But as soon as I take a moment to just really focus on the fact that I'm having a perfectly lovely conversation with you at this moment, actually, everything is really safe right here, right now. And the more I focus my attention on this, and this is a skill, it's particularly hard to do when, one, you haven't practiced it, And two, when you only try and do it when you really need it because
Yeah.
you're under threat from something that's happened. But if we practice the skill, we become very good at being able to just be in the present. And by being in the present, feeling the safety of the present, our whole system returns to more smooth regulation. We at least have a break.
Mm.
Because some threats, maintain. Some people are going through really stressful things.
Yeah.
But at least having moments of break from it. And the other thing, if I can just add this too, people think that to be focusing on, meditating or mindfulness, where you're focusing in on something in particular, means sustaining attention for long periods of time. Your brain's supposed to be moving and shifting every 3 to 7 seconds. So your brain's always supposed to be trying to find the next thing to either look at or to be aware of, or the threat around the corner. So you're not going to be able to sustain your attention for more than just a few seconds. That's normal. But the skill is that when the attention does flow, as soon as you notice, and you could be 2 minutes down a train of thought of something, but as soon as you notice, you just immediately release it and bring it back to what you're doing. So it's this bringing it back over and over. That's the practice. It goes off and bring it back, goes off and bring it back. That's what the practice is.
Okay. So that's really interesting, because in terms of mindfulness, I've always thought you've got to be in this Zen-like state.
That's the goal. That's where we get to. That's the 100, from going from 0 to 100. And there will be people who have mastered that, and they can have huge neurological change within their brain when you've mastered that skill set. But that takes many hours of practice.
It's time. And just sticking on this subject for a second. So when we bring in mindfulness, so people listening, watching me, who's thinking, actually, mindfulness is definitely something I would like to adopt and bring into my maybe daily, weekly, monthly cycle. So when we use mindfulness, do we use it in those moments when we become aware of maybe we're feeling anxious, or do we use it generally, or do we have it in our back pocket for those difficult moments?
So we talk about formal and informal practice. So formal practice is when you actually do intentionally practice, like when you sit down to play a piano and you're practicing the piece, and you have to do it every day to kind of get better and better. So the idea of that is just taking a little bit of time to decide you're going to do this, not because you need it, just because you're going to practice the art and skill of it. But the thing about practicing formally is that nobody feels they have any time to do this, but you don't have to have time. So to be mindful, to be in the present, you can do that while you are doing anything. So you can be wonderfully mindful while you are cleaning up dinner. It's just the idea that you're not letting your mind wander off to all these things. You're intentionally focusing on what you're doing. You're experiencing what you're having in the moment. There's lots of sensory activity that's going on. As you get better and better, you can go from the external, so being really mindful of what the plate feels like, or what temperature the water is, or what the soap is like, or the smells that and what you see and all the details. That's all very external based sensory activity that you could focus on moment by moment. As you get more skilled, you start to notice what's going on in your mind and in your body. So you become, again, you're increasing this awareness of what's happening, both internally and externally, and how internally you're reacting to externally, or how your body's reacting to internal thoughts and feelings, that kind of thing. So this is this awareness step.
Nice. It's definitely eye-opening to me and sounds quite powerful. So does it help us have better perspective? Because sometimes our mind can run wild in terms of thoughts, in terms of, to your point earlier, invariably it goes to negative stuff. So if we bring in this mindfulness practice, does it really just give us a sense of clarity and perspective?
I mean, it has the potential. So it starts out as being, very basic, just trying to keep our mind somewhere neutral and let our whole system calm down and respond. And that can feel better. And a lot of people will quickly say, doing some mindfulness practice, they can see the benefit of it. You can also notice your mind telling you things like, I don't want to do this. And I'll have a lot of people say that they are having to work with their mind saying, oh, just get up. You don't have time for this. Oh, just stop this. You need to go do this, 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 and this. But it's just, those are just thoughts. So when you really start to appreciate the mindfulness concept, you can watch these thoughts. You just watch them. They come and they go. So that thought saying, this is ridiculous, just stop this, you have so many things to do, will quickly move on into, oh, I wonder what that noise is. Or, you can just suddenly notice a bit of the futility of thoughts. We are so chained to our thoughts as if they represent truth and future. And actually, we know through science that that we are filled with cognitive biases and errors, thought errors. That's a big concept in things like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, which is kind of the most known therapy type. And by the way, there's so many other types besides
really
so many, but that's one that's really well known. And that's a big piece of it, is trying to just notice what kind of thought errors we're using to go day to day. So for instance, the fact that that boss man gave you the side eye is because he's singling you out, because he really doesn't like you. Suddenly we're using personalization and predicting the future and all these different thought concepts that we know to be errorful. And actually, if we were to sit him down and say, what did you mean by that? He very well could say, what, my eye was twitchy.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Again, it's the way that our brain works, that sometimes I've had before where maybe I've been trying to get hold of a client for something and they haven't got back to me, and I immediately think, well, they're avoiding me, this, that, and the other. And then eventually I might randomly get an email out of the blue saying, sorry, something's happened, and they never know my thoughts. My thoughts were, they're avoiding me, or did I do something last time we met? But it's totally the reverse of that, and it's totally explainable and logical why they haven't got back to me. But my brain has just gone haywire about a negative reason why they haven't got back to me.
Yeah, let me be clear. Mine does too. So I may know all of these things. It doesn't stop the triggers. It doesn't stop the messages coming. What I work to do is just to increase my awareness that when I'm starting to feel that feeling or that nervousness, or if I'm going down something that's a bit more self-deprecating, to just like take stock, to notice it's happening and have a moment to, we'll call it like creating space, to almost create some space behind the thoughts just running and our true fusion and belief in everything that it's saying. So I now know that, particularly when I'm starting to get that uncomfortable feeling within my body, to check in with my thoughts and just maybe hold them a little bit loosely.
Yeah, I see that alignment, because we do fit it in our bodies, and your body feels a little bit anxious, a little bit tighter, a little bit sweatier in our heads and whatnot. But then we can, if we're, I guess, mindful, we can bring it back together again.
Yes, we can at least be clear that there's, we don't know a lot of stuff. We don't know a lot of things, particularly about what's in other people's minds or what the future is going to hold. And that tends to be the two biggest things that cause us a lot of problems, our assumptions that are really threat-based around those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. When we spoke previously, we spoke a little bit about this different relationship in society that we have with exercise in our body and exercise in our mind. And it's quite common for people to pay monthly subscriptions to join a gym, where we exercise our body, but we don't have that same relationship with why we exercise in our mind. Why do we take our minds and therapy for granted? I wonder whether you might be able to expand on that, give me your perspective on that.
I don't know. This is maybe just a thought that I have too, but I do feel like everybody is mentally tired.
Mm.
So that's probably one reason why we don't necessarily think about exercising our brains. I think most of us feel like we have been exercising our brains a huge amount. And actually things like our screens, they really do take a toll on
Mm.
what our brain is doing, light into our eyes, and not having enough sleep to have the regenerative processes that help, us have resilience of a mind. I think the concept of exercising our mind is something really outside of the box. It's the idea of what we're talking about now is challenging the way we think, our thought content, the fact that our thoughts are, relatively trivial. That's not the way people see their thought content or their consciousness. And therefore, to talk about exercising probably means something different than what we mean when we're talking
Mm.
about it right now. And I think that's part of just maybe some confusion. Again, I think a big thing is with psychology in general. That word, though it has become so much more acceptable in the past, especially since COVID, when mental
Yeah.
health and the difficulty and
Yeah.
struggle was universal. So people became much more accepting of psychology. After that, I've seen a real shift, but there's still a whole view that, mental illness doesn't even exist for some
Mm.
people, that's not, or it's a sign of weakness, or that
Mm.
it's, hippie or invent. I don't know. There's a lot of negative connotation with it. And I think there's also a lot of fear with that too, because the history of psychology and severe mental illness is shocking, really upsetting stuff. So I think there's still some carryover that people feel that,
Mm.
seeing a psychologist has a potential negative connotation for their identity, or who they are, or their value, or their
Mm.
capability, or their strength. And the truth is that that's part of what needs to be rewritten, because psychology tools and techniques, and thinking about how we think and thinking about how we manage our emotions,
Mm.
how do we regulate our behavior when we're, experiencing different emotion states, all of that should be taught in school from a very
Yeah.
early age, and we'd have a very different society if that were the case.
Yeah.
So we're moving away from psychology being just for those with mental health diagnoses to psychology being accessible to the general public, the way that, a
Mm.
personal trainer
Yeah.
is accessible to those who want to prioritize it.
Yeah, totally. And I think that would be a lovely place to get to, where that is available for, well, for everybody,
Yeah.
because yeah.
And that will always be a hurdle. It's just accessibility.
Mm.
But, again, there's a lot of at least generic principles that should be shouted farther afield.
Yeah.
And there should be so much more about the brain. But again, the brain is maybe a bit of an intimidating place. So people hear brain and they go, but actually there's a lot of learning about how each one of us works,
Mm.
based off of understanding how our brain works, and more importantly, how our past has shaped our brain. And we must know why our past experiences mean that for me to go into a massive crowded room filled with people to give a presentation might not be as upsetting as, my colleague, or a peer who's had very different experiences standing up in front of a crowd and being seen, or, and that's going to be based off of what our brain has learned. And my brain has learned different things than my colleague's brain.
And okay, so in relation to that, I don't know how we would do this, but it's an interesting point, a really interesting point. So to understand those questions, is there a way that we can try and tackle that, try and find clarity in why I might be more nervous delivering a presentation to a colleague? How do we tackle that, or get into that space? And I guess it's having a psychologist, would it be, or neuropsychologist, somebody that we can talk
That's
to?
That will definitely be one way. And I definitely have seen a number of clients in my clinic who have come for things like anxiety, having to do their job, where
Yeah.
suddenly they got in a new role and they had to
Mhm.
be seen more or had to be more social. And suddenly that became a really appropriate use of my time. And if I can just have a little caveat over here too, I have 90% of my clients come in and at some point during therapy say, you know what, it's really not that bad. I really shouldn't be here. You have more, pressing cases to
Yeah.
see. And I just want to be saying that right here, right now, that is never going to be the case.
Mm.
It's about having people who want to better themselves or to work on
Yeah.
something or to think through. Those are the people who should be in that clinic
Yeah.
office. But in this example, what you're talking about now, yes, it could be about going to see somebody. That's an option. We can talk about it in different ways. We can talk about it in future generations. So if we're thinking about moving in the future, we know that the more normal, the more experience, the more exposure we have to something, if we do it a little bit at a time and work on controlling our system from going haywire. So if you have some small presentations, you work on breathing techniques or mindfulness, you work on bringing the system down, you work on creating safety within your body, you work on challenging these ruminating negative thoughts that are probably not true, then you can maybe do your own work of gradually
Yeah.
exposing yourself more until your brain finds it safer and doesn't need the alarm system to be going off in the same way. That's how your brain is learning to make something better. And we do this with CBT exposure therapy for phobias or after traumas. But if you could also have the interest, you could also be looking backward. Where did this come from? What do I
Mm.
remember? What does this bring up for me? What are the ideas or thoughts that, I tend to develop about who I am and my integrity or my ego or how people are going to perceive me? And is there reasons from my past? And sometimes just things like journaling about it, seeing what comes up, this kind of free association of just talking things out and listening back or writing, because that helps channel our thoughts, or talking to a friend that's like-minded, that be open to these kind of exploratory communications. Those are all ways that we could do this without, paying a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's, I guess, a thought that comes to mind for me is, and I love everything you just said actually, because it's all really helpful and it's normalizing the idea that we all should be not we all do need to think about our future selves and how we're going to develop, and even our present selves, because if we've got presentations to do and we're a bit nervous, this can be quite normal, but actually we can remedy that. We can remedy that. There are things that we can do. We don't need to suffer in silence and just have that and just settle for that. We can actually remedy that. And just to go back to your point about therapy and people and psychology and people not, or maybe, I don't know if people are embarrassed with it. I'm not sure what the right word is, but most of the people that I admire, I admire lots of people, but a lot of people that I follow and admire, they have loads of therapy, in that they are choosing therapy because they're thinking about their present, they're thinking about their future, where they want to take their lives and their goals, and they know that in order for them to achieve and to navigate the road bumps that come in different spheres of their lives, that they need therapy. It's an integral part of their. So we talk about exercise. It's part of their exercise. It's part of their diet. It's as important as that to their development. And I think for me, it's like getting to that point where you've got different, I guess, tranches in our life, if that's a word. Therapy is a core part of that, along with exercise, along with nutrition and other elements.
That's absolutely, I mean, that's my view. Of course,
Mm.
I'm biased
Yeah.
in that sense. But I think to just normalize it a little bit, we know what big traumas are. We
Mm.
know when people have suffered from, significant events that have threatened themselves, people that they've loved, their sense of security or safety or next meal, or we know what those are. And I think a lot of people assume that therapy is reserved for those people who have, real things that are in their past that they need to work.
Yeah.
But actually, what I have found is that so much suffering comes from the experiences and the messages that we took, particularly growing up or in young adulthood, through our experiences in life, that people will say, well, nothing really happened to me.
Yeah.
Yet they're plagued by particular thoughts or ideas that develop. A classic example would be, this is not to pick on anybody. It's just giving a type of example of where something could be both beneficial and go wrong. Let's say we have a child like my own. I am married to somebody who has, a lot of work, and I work hard too. And though we do everything we can to give a lot of love and attention to our children, I would hope that my children would see our work ethic as something that would drive them and make them want to go out into the world and give back and develop something and have purpose. But at the same time, we see clients who come in of the same, same parental kind of ilk, where they also felt, well, mom and dad were always too busy. They were always working. They were always somewhere away. They miss, this at school, and they didn't show up to my parade, or, and then some of that messaging is both, I need to work hard and I need to do well, but also, I maybe am not worth that much because they didn't think that I was more important than their work. Or somebody else would take, well, actually, I must work incredibly hard and be successful to be worthy or to be loved. These are things that then drive anxiety and stress and burnout when they become adults. And they would be saying, well, no, I had a great childhood. My parents loved me. But at the same time, there was messages that have been developed over their learning, and everybody's going to have a particular situation that then can create a huge amount of something internally that is highly distressing and that people are running from and ending up with either physical or mental health conditions because of it.
Is it curious or very interesting for you when you're working with clients and they do want to do the work, they do want to really engage in therapy just so that they can maybe remove anxiety, remove fear, think about a really promising and exciting future? Is it interesting for you when you're working with clients and you see them evolve, where they start to remedy and have clarity and awareness around what may have been the blockages from their past?
Of course. My work fills my cup. So, we talk about work and stress and work-life balance, and there's, this concept of good stress and bad stress, and that's kind of a misnomer, but there's definitely going to be, working hard for fulfillment. And I do find that there'll be times when I can be in a foul mood when I wake up, and then I go into clinic, and there's something about just engagement, just working with a person, having, it becomes quite an intimate relationship. You are really getting to know somebody's, soul as well as their brain and mind. And, that can be incredibly fulfilling back. And then to see movement or change, I've even laughed sometimes because I'll discontinue with somebody, and appropriately, it was just the end of the road for what we were working on. And then maybe, a year or two, they come back to work on something else. We have a relationship, so they return again, which is lovely. And I talk about it as like season 2. I was left on a cliffhanger of season 1, and now I get to see how it's developed, what's next. Exactly.
With the evolution. I'm conscious of time, so we'll wrap up in a second. But if I may, I've got maybe a couple of questions, and we can sort of move quickly through these. So one is around future self. So the idea of everybody, I guess, that's got dreams, desires, wants, goals, etc., fear, obviously, and maybe a lack of awareness can maybe compromise that. So I've heard somewhere around to really focus on that future self and to change our habits, we kind of have to morph into that space now by maybe adopting those behaviors and conquering fears. Do you have anything to say around that?
Small changes,
Okay.
it's about, so there's a difference between, so let's talk quickly about difference between goals versus values.
Mm,
A value is going to be almost like the guiding principle, the
mm,
thing that you want to move towards. It's always going to be there. You're never going to just achieve it and say, well,
okay.
I've done it. It's going to be who you want to be, who you, aspire, admire. That's going to be those principles that lead you, and should be leading all your decision making and how you interact with others, for
Okay.
instance, how you hold yourself. So that's more of a value, and the goal is going to be the little things that you set up that you do achieve and you do.
Okay.
But the
Okay.
important bit is that you can fail at your goals and not let go of your values.
Yeah.
Goals they come and go, but if you
Yeah.
can keep
Okay.
resetting new goals, then all those failures did was just showed you what the
Mm,
best goal or what the next one and the most appropriate one that's still going to be moving you to your value, what that really is.
yeah. That makes sense. And sometimes we learn, well, not sometimes, I think more as we learn through trial and error and failures. And sometimes the goals might not have been the right goals. We can only learn that by
That's right.
like starting and setting some goals. And so in terms of people watching and listening, if they want to contact you, they want to work with you, they want to find out more about how they can develop and work with you, what's the best way to contact you?
So the best way is to come through our practice. We're at Healthy Mind Psychology. It's a team of myself leading. We have about 22, 23 other clinical psychologists, doctoral level psychologists, and health psychologists that are on board. And we do a lot of online work. And let me just make a comment about that too. It is my personal view that is much better to have a really strong fit between a client's needs and one of the specialists, as opposed to just having somebody down the street who
Mm,
happens to be close.
yeah.
So in the relationship is so important. So we really we push for this concept of a matching service, where
Mm,
we take the client who's coming to us and we look at our specialists and who would be the best match to try and get a good relationship developing to help people with that. So come check us out at Healthy Mind Psychology. You can just Google that. It's on the www.healthymindpsychology.co.uk. And on there, they have, a form you can fill out. We're at inquiries@healthymindpsychology.co.uk to just email directly to.
okay, amazing. I'll get the link, put it on the show notes, and any other relevant information we'll put on the show notes. And
And can I also just mention Instagram too? Please
yes,
follow us
yes.
there, because if we're at Healthy Mind Psychology UK, and that's going to be a great place to just
Mhm.
hear a little bit more about all these ideas. If you're just thinking about it or just want to get, some more information, we're just always putting a lot more, especially about the mind body stuff and about how, our emotion and mental state is affecting our physical health condition. We work with a lot of people with different chronic health conditions, chronic pain, functional neurological disorder, medically unexplained symptoms, health anxiety, all kinds of things in that space. So it's kind of specialist work. So anybody interested in that,
Yeah. And
check
I
that out.
guess as well, maybe if people are listening or watching and they might know somebody that has suffered some type of situation where, because I think if we're not in your space, and invariably I'm a lay person, so you don't have a fraction of your expertise or knowledge, you don't know where to go. So anybody that's listening, watching now, you do know where to go now, but also you might be able to inform a family friend, a work colleague, somebody that needs some support in relation to an illness or something that's happened, and they want to get a better connection with that mind body connection.
That's right. Because sometimes it's even just the stress of having an illness or having the life changes that come with, something that's happened medically. That too is something that is valid and a way to get support around just the stress of coping that, should have impact, at least not to worsen the
Mm.
condition.
And interestingly, said interestingly a lot in this conversation, but there's so many what you do. It's because it's not something that I'm aware of. I know that the impact that it can have, but I think around that term suffer in silence, so you don't get things treated or dealt with, just because we just don't have the expertise. And if we could find solutions,
That's right.
we all would be, I think the majority of us would be say, sign me up. Where do I go? Where do I start the process? And when we suffer, you would know about this a lot more than me, but when we suffer difficult moments, whether it be a brain injury or something or another, everybody can be at wit's end. The injured person, family, friends.
Yeah.
It's almost like a
The whole system gets
yeah,
changed.
yeah. That whole ecosystem is affected. So I would definitely put all your details on the show notes for people to get in contact with you. And I would love to have another conversation with you because we probably haven't scratched the surface. Time.
I don't think we have. I haven't done all the health stuff yet.
Well, yeah. Is there anything that you would like to add before we wrap up?
I think again, just trying to normalize how stressful life is for everybody. I don't think that we've really seen what the pandemic did to us yet. I
Really?
think that's still to come. Yeah, a lot of the results of something that was outside the realms of what anybody could see. And we're entering a system now where there's a lot more war and a lot of tension and fear and politics, and there's so much that on a bigger scale, all the AI stuff, there's so much that I think is out there that's creating a stress system for all of us, that I'm just trying to normalize out there us all thinking about it and trying to create our resilience while we can.
Yeah. So okay. So I'm going to have to let you go now because I know that you've got an evening and family to attend to. So there is a last question, which is a recurring question. So if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, they can be alive or past. Who might you invite?
Sigmund Freud as number one. Again, he was one of the fathers of being able to understand unconscious processing. And so even though there's going to be a lot of things that have been debunked, there's still a lot that we use.
I'd love him doing his call now. 3-way. I love that. Just you two chopping it up. That'd be amazing.
That'd be fun. There's also somebody named Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard this name before. He recently did an interview with Prince Harry. That was a big thing where he diagnosed Prince Harry with ADHD live, and it was
oh wow.
There was some things that happened because of that. He's an amazing thinker, and I have really developed my practice based off of his work in particular. So big shout out to Gabor. I know he spends time in London too. And then the last would be Esther Perel, who is an amazing psychotherapist who speaks a lot about relationships, love, sex, the way that long-term relationships work and how we really struggle with that as society. And she just has such a fresh take on thinking about, the most important thing in our lives, which is our relationships with other people. So I think a conversation with this group would just be mind-blowing.
That would be amazing. And 2 of them are alive, right?
And 2 of them are alive still.
So,
and they know each other. So
and they know each other. So that's kind of
I just need to be invited to the table.
Let's work on that. You never know. You never know. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. I knew I would have a 3 enjoyable discussions with you. Hopefully there'll be a 4. And love to stay in contact.
And thank you for showing interest. That's the other thing. Thank you for helping to put this out there, because this is stuff that I really want everybody to be aware of and to move forward in their knowledge and their learning. So
well, I think awareness and knowledge is, and it's funny, in certain areas there's some really short supply, and we can be very incidental about things that are very important to us, and very there's lots of overconsumption of things that aren't that impact, well, they can be impactful to us, but in negative ways. So what you do, I'm just a huge fan. So it's a huge pleasure to have this conversation. Hopefully we'll have more. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in to this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show. So please do share this episode far and wide, particularly if you know people that are keen to really strike that balance between understanding their body and their emotions and being more mindful. So please do share this episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe, because it really does help us grow the channel, and your feedback is most welcome. So we're keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So until the next time, take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.